Hello, good evening and welcome. Lovely to see you all here. My name is Michaela. I'm from the Royal Society of Literature. And we have worked for the past few years with the lovely folks at King's College to look at careers in literature. So I'll just tell you a very brief bit about the Royal Society of Literature before I tell you about this. We celebrate and support writers at every stage of their career. We're led by writers and believe that all literature matters and shapes the world that we live in. We work with schools and prisons because we believe that everyone should have access to literature. And we give readers access to the best writers from around the world. You will have seen, if you haven't come in this way, my colleague Eleanor is on the desk outside and she has some lovely merch which you're welcome to take with you, and you can find out all about becoming a member, and that gives you access to free events throughout the year. And we've got a really exciting one coming up on the 12th of December, which is our first book slam. It's a collaboration with an excellent live literature night, and tickets are really reasonably priced for students, especially only £7. So you can take a flyer and find out more. So tonight's event is a collaboration between the RSL and King's College, and we've got together to pool our expertise and gather some of our favourite people in the world of English and comparative literature. They're going to reveal their career paths, and hopefully they'll inspire you or completely put you off some of their paths, maybe, but at least you will be well informed, whether you are a recent graduate or still a student or thinking about a career change. I know that industries from the outside often feel impenetrable, especially if you don't know someone who works in them, and even more so if you don't see yourself represented in those roles. So hopefully this discussion is going to lift the veil and offer a really good insight. And now I'm going to hand over to our two chairs for the night, Debu Amon and Anushri Anand.
Hi, evening all. Welcome to the annual Careers and Literature event. Presume for lack of better judgment that everyone in the room here and online, is considering a career in literature. Take that, bankers. But really, today we've got three amazing speakers, all of who are working in different fields of the industry, here to share their experiences and sage wisdom, like Gandalf, I guess. Before I introduce them, I'd like to send apologies from Rachel Long, who's fallen ill, so couldn't be with us today, but she's here in spirit. Now, co-chairing with me today is Anushri Anand, a final year student studying comparative literature with interests in science fiction, mythology, and post-humanism. She has previously interned in the fields of publishing and has worked in university magazines on numerous editing positions. And on today's panel, we have Shona, Abhyankar, fresh. Actually, can we have a round of applause? Fresh off a Booker Prize win. Shona with Harvey Secker, all by Samantha Harvey, won last night. It's amazing. Shona began her career working at Waterstones as a Waterstones bookseller before taking a job as a publicity assistant at Orion Publishing. She's worked as a literary agent in both London and Sydney, Australia, and in publishing PR, both in-house and agency side within adult and children's publishing. Her authors over the years have included Sheryl Sandberg, Abby Morgan, Carl Ove Nausgaard, and Haruki Murakami. Shona is a former Publicity Circle mentor and co-founder of the Prima Donna Festival and co-host of the Prima Donna podcast. She is currently Publicity Director for Harville Secker and a division of Penguin Random House UK. We also have Lily Blacksell. Lily is a poet and events programmer. She is literature programmer at Southbank Centre and previously worked for the RSL as public events and partnerships manager. Lily has worked as a bookseller at the London Review Bookshop and has taught courses for the Poetry School and Columbia University. She runs a poetry and music night called Cannon Fodder. I've been to it, you should too. Which she took to Glastonbury this year. She's a trustee of Key Arts on the Isle of Wight. Isle of Wight's leading art gallery and venue for live arts events. Lily's poems have appeared in the likes of Poetry Review and Bomb magazine. Her two pamphlets are There's No Such Thing by Ignition Press and Stress Tested by Rough Trade Books. And we also have Eleanor Greene. Eleanor studied English and philosophy at Birmingham University and went on to work first as a runner, then script editor, then development producer and exec producer in the world of TV, drama and film. Her credits include Queer as Folk, Clocking Off, Party Animals, The Silence, The Scandalous Lady W, starring Natalie Dormer, and more recently, the BAFTA-nominated The Windermere Children. Eleanor also teaches screenwriting periodically at Arvon, home of creative writing. She also quilts and reads voraciously in her spare time. Okay, so we're going to kick off with Anush, who's going to ask our panel the opening question.
So my opening question is kind of asking you to retrospect a little bit on your careers and everything that's happened in them. And what surprised you most about the publishing or production process? Was that an unpleasant experience? And if so, is it something you were able to reconcile with, or is it something you're trying to change?
Should I go first? Yeah. Well, yeah, I think so. Yeah, as Debo mentioned, I've worked in literature in a few different ways as a bookseller. I've done bits and bobs with various publishers, and then now the majority of my focus in the industry is with bringing books to sort of live events. And so, yeah, I think you therefore see books at different stages in their life cycles, I suppose. I don't know if there was anything sort of hugely surprising, but I think it can just be worth remembering that often, you know, the creative side of things, the artistic side of things, the literary side of things are going hand in hand with commercial intentions as well, and that a lot of people are working to make these events happen, for example, because they may boost book sales or increase or improve a writer's profile, and so it's good not to be too naive about that, I think, and to understand the importance of that commercial and financial side, I think.
I can go next. I hope everyone can hear. My throat's a bit sore after last night, sorry. I think in terms of anything being surprising, it was probably naivety, following on from what you were saying. But when I went in, I literally took the first job I saw in publishing was publicity assistant. I think I wanted to be an editor because that's all I knew. I didn't really know about any other departments. So what I would suggest, which was surprising to me, but not a bad surprise, was how many departments there are in publishing. So if you want to work in publishing, do your research, but don't be scared off. If you don't think you can be an editor, there are so many other roles you could do. We have sales, rights, production, marketing. You know, it's a real team effort for one book that gets published. And if you don't ever get scared off and think you don't read literary fiction or you're not clever enough, you know, there are so many different genres. If you like reading, if you want to get books into people's hands, then I would say just go for it and get some experience. But I don't think anything was a bad surprise when I went in. I was really pleased to see there was so much more than I expected.
I think for me, the thing that was a massive surprise and still is just how long things take to happen. So working in TV, you know, you sort of can write a script. You can go like 10 drafts before you send it out to a broadcaster. The broadcaster can take months to read it. Then they can give you notes and you've got more drafts to do. So it's draft upon draft upon draft, and the sort of collaboration of that, the collaborative effort that's needed in order to make all of those drafts happen, in order to get the thing made, is just huge. And I think I've had to learn to be really patient and also juggle lots of things at the same time. And so I still find the process really frustratingly slow. And I just try and always be the quickest one. And that's one of the ways in which I reconcile the slow process.
Yeah, I would say that's the same in publishing, actually. If anyone out there is a budding author, it takes a long time to get a book into a manuscript form that will actually be on the shelves. So don't think it has to be perfect if you're trying to get an agent, for example. The agent's job is to see potential. then an editor's job is to help you structure that book and shape it into something that will sell. So don't be scared off if you don't think it's polished. It doesn't need to be.
So, actually, Eleanor, talking about the length of, can everyone hear us? Cool. Talking about the length of the process, I think there's also a bit of a process to even get your foot first in the door. So I was wondering, I'll ask you first and everyone else can please chip in. What were the informal things you did before you became a professional, where you started getting paid to do this, that you felt helped along the way?
So university, I've always thought, I was saying to you earlier, I've always wanted to work with writers. I've always wanted to work in storytelling. I've always known that my career was ultimately going to end up in storytelling. So at school, I was kind of directing plays. At university, I directed plays. I wrote a play. I sort of, anyone who wants to listen to me talk about anything, theatre, play, TV, film, I was there with an opinion. And I guess those are the things that led me to ultimately getting my first job as a runner on Queer as Folk. And then informally what I did, I was being paid to make cups of tea, but I look at Michaela, because I think I was living with you at the time. I also sort of begged my boss to let me read scripts and unpaid, and she let me. And actually, that basically then wrote what's called a script report. Wrote script reports on the scripts that she'd been sent by agents and writers prospectively wanting to work with her. Offered my evaluation and my opinion. And from that, I got a job as a script editor, and that sort of launched my career. Yeah.
Very similar. I think doing unpaid work, that's what I did. And weirdly now, full circle, probably like 25 years later, I'm back at Vintage now, where I did work experience first. That was when I was studying for my A-levels. I did a summer of just free work there, and just helped the publicity department, actually, funnily enough, even though I didn't know I was going to end up in publicity at all. So bookshop work was really useful because you have sales reps coming in from different publishers who show you their list. So then I started getting interested in publishing. But if you want to go into the book industry, I would say just do as much work experience as you can, paid or unpaid. I know it's not always easy to do unpaid, but if you know any people who have contacts, just hit them up, see if you can even do a week. It's really useful experience to even gauge where you want to go within that industry.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. And Eleanor and I actually both went to Birmingham University, so we were talking about it. And I think my uni days were really formative for me, because I just sort of, I just felt I had such permission to, like, oh, if you wanted to put on an event, or put on a play, or write a review, or get a free ticket to something because you promise you're going to write the 300 words about it or something like that, just go for it. And I know that there's a really amazing student paper at King's, and I was the music editor for my student paper at Birmingham, which then meant as well I was getting used to going to lots of gigs and thinking, what is it that makes this work or not work, or who's the tour manager I've had to be in touch with, or like why didn't the band want to do my very good interview, etc., etc. So yeah, that was a good exposure that I certainly wasn't getting paid for, but was I was able to write, and that was great, and I was kind of learning industry stuff. So yeah, make the most of the sort of permission that you kind of are granted by being a student, even if it can feel difficult and not necessarily paid. I did a bit of volunteering for a charity called Kursler, who do the most amazing arts award schemes in prisons. They've actually got an exhibition just over the river at the moment, which I'd recommend. And I was helping with the sort of non-fiction arm of that prize. So again, reading manuscripts, reading submissions in quite a particular context. And doing as much reading, but also interaction as possible. I think it's an interesting industry because so much of it can feel like a sort of solitary pursuit, that you're reading on your own or you're writing on your own, and then actually so much of it is really different to that and is really collaborative and conversational. So yeah,
I think with that as well, did a lot of the same stuff. But I think it was just really helpful to also find what I didn't want to do.
yeah.
There was lots of, I remember doing exactly what you did, but I was working in theatre. There's 2,000 scripts over there. I maybe did Yeah, I was like, these are bad. Like, if I've got to do this to find gold, I'm not into it.
I love that challenge.
I was like, nah. Like, get to me when it's good. Like, I need someone else to do. So yeah, it's really valuable. Just finding also not just what you want, but also know what you don't.
Yeah, that's a great point.
This is mostly targeted towards Shona, but if Eleanor or Lily have anything to add, please do. For new and upcoming writers, what would you be looking for in manuscripts, or for people who aim to enter the industry in a non-creative capacity, what would you be looking for in a CV?
When you say non-creative,
Like the technical aspects of it, like publishing, editing, production.
okay. Well, firstly, I wouldn't see those CVs just because I would look at publicity CVs. But I think experience would be, or just a passion for it. If you don't have experience, it's a reason why you want to go into it. What's interesting is that I work with a colleague at the moment in our team who came from music, for example. She was a music publicist. She had no experience in publishing. So you don't have to be in books to get into books. You can come in. Actually, now publishers really are looking for people with fresh eyes who have worked in a different industry. If you like reading and you are passionate about books and you think you can help sell a book or publicize a book, or you're really good at proofreading, there is no reason why you can't try and come in. If in terms of manuscript, we're really looking for a writer who kind of has a very clear idea of their reader. So it's really good to think of comparable authors who, if someone picks up your book in a bookshop, which other authors are they going to be looking at? And, you know, and target your readership, because we read a lot of manuscripts, but we want to have an idea of, will this sit on our list? If it doesn't sit on our list, which other division within Penguin Random House could it fit into? If it's a jumble, maybe you have 2 books in one, maybe stick to one. And your editor will ask you to flesh it out if it's not long enough. So as I said, it doesn't have to be the right length. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you think you are a good writer, do some research on your structure. And we do need agent submissions now. It's getting very hard to submit without an agent. So I would do your research in terms of literary agent as well.
So one massive part of my job is to read submissions from writers that are sent to me, often by agents, but also sometimes unsolicited. And actually, what I look for is a voice, and I guess that's kind of probably quite similar to you as well. And that's probably the best advice I was ever given by a writer called Paul Abbott. Is that he said to me, even when I was learning to be a script editor, he said, you will learn to find your voice, and you do as a writer as well. And what he meant by that was, you learn to sort of find your best self. How do you express your best self as a person when you walk into the room? Do you use your humor? Do you use your intellect? Do you use your ability to use long words? Like, what is it that makes you you, that makes you the best version of you? And actually, so that's important when you walk into a room. But then also when I'm reading a script, I'm looking for like great dialogue, a great ear for dialogue. But if you don't have great dialogue, that's not just the thing. The thing is a voice. You know, what do you have to say about the world? What are you trying to show me about what you understand about the world that I don't know? It's sort of a bit intangible, but it's also, as soon as you read good writing, it's really obvious. And it's a bit like when you read a brilliant novel. You pick up a really brilliant piece of writing and you immediately think, the writer is showing me who they are through what they are choosing to say. And that is what I'm looking for when I'm reading a script.
I think maybe on the sort of CV side of things, definitely repeating what's been said about working out what your transferable skills might be, what your transferable interests might be, what different art forms, different industries can or have taught you about working in the arts, or in my world, sort of live events. I think being able to give examples of events you've been to that you feel were successful and why that's the case. Even better if they happen to be at the Southbank Centre, for example, but also, like, if the people are not based in London, that absolutely doesn't matter. Like, tell us about somewhere else, or like something else. And I think also what a lot of stuff kind of comes back to, I guess, is working out sort of what you like and what you do, and working out what you don't like is such a huge huge part of that. So yeah, not being afraid to kind of have that discerning feeling, because then that can really come across and make you stand out, I think. Yeah.
Talking about that and like discernment and like figuring things out, what are like the soft skills you think you've had to develop, to like progress to this point in your career, or that you felt like you didn't already have, or have become particularly useful as you've done this?
I think what can be sort of careers in literature, I think what can be the kind of sweet spot, and maybe this goes for a lot of the arts, is if you're a creative person, but who's also quite an organized person, and if you're able to sort of combine those two things. It's not always the case, but it can mean that maybe you can be very empathetic and good at working with artists who then maybe don't have the sort of office experience or whatever, and then can be a good conduit maybe to the more I don't know, corporate side of working. So I think working out how to combine those two sides of your personality or skill set or whatever can be really valuable. As I mentioned, I think the kind of working with publicists and tour managers and all the rest was quite useful skills that I'd really started building from my undergraduate days. And not being afraid of working with budgets or thinking about finances and that sort of thing, even though it can feel like, oh, numbers, no, not for me. I think giving yourself a bit more confidence with that side of things can be really, really valuable.
In terms of being a publicist, I think one soft skill is learning how to be persistent without being pushy, because you are trying to get coverage and you may have to chase journalists. They may just not see your email, they may just not be in when you're trying to call, but you do need to get that interview, or you have an author who needs to be, everyone needs to be aware of this book. So you're working 3-4 months ahead. So I'm now working on titles coming out next summer, for example, but we're planning the strategy. But you don't want to annoy anyone. You don't want to keep chasing. So when do you know when to stop calling? Or when do you know when to email and when to call? It is a soft skill, because you also build up relationships with the media. So you need to have good relationships with them. Otherwise, they're just not even going to bother opening your email, for example. Another thing I would say is obviously reading. You're going to be reading a lot. So if you think you're going to have a lot of free time, think again. You're going to be reading in your free time. It's not always going to be books that you want to read, but you've been given them to work on. So you might not have a choice in what you're reading, but look at the potential in everything you're reading. And it's an amazing education. I've read books that I would never have picked up because I've been assigned them, allocated them to work on. Also, don't be afraid to talk to people. You have to if you're shy, you can still work in publishing and you can still be a publicist. I'm not saying you have to go into a party and talk to complete strangers, but know that you deserve to be there. I think just know that you have got that job for a reason. So I would say, believe in yourself.
Get people to do they might not what they don't want to do, but like that sort of the long slog of like a tour.
Yeah, quite a lot, especially with debut authors who might not really feel comfortable doing interviews, for example. It's quite scary doing a live interview on radio or TV if you've never done that before. But then if they really don't want to, you go for stations that pre-record. You find a way around it. If they don't want to do interviews, could they write pieces? When you read something in a magazine or a newspaper that has a book title at the bottom, that's the publicist has pitched that by talking to the author. And also drawing out, if you like talking to people, this could be a dream job for you, because the author may say something like, oh, I haven't got an interesting story. Last year I travelled in Cambodia and my leg fell off. And then you're like, hang on a minute, they might think it anyway, that's a silly example, but it's things that happen to us in everyday life that we don't necessarily think are interesting, but a publicist will just keep their ears open, and that could be a feature. It could be a feature they could write, that will really resonate with readers. So just kind of, if you're interested in people's lives, then just go for it, I think.
I mean, my soft skills answer is a bit more tough love. My soft skills answer is like, don't be a crazy person. That sounds awful, but like, what I mean by that is, you think you're entering into a creative job, and it is a creative job, but it's a business. Yeah. It's show business, and that means that you are trying to be somebody that people want to work with. You want to walk into a room and basically present yourself as like a professional who can listen more than they can talk. This was someone once said to me, two of these, one of those. And actually, it's just about being I think the soft skills that I learned, and I'm a talker, I've had to learn how to listen better and be really present at least as being really professional, and not like a crazy character. I'm thinking about one particular occasion. This is an anecdote. Somebody wrote a script. I really liked the script, and I invited this person to come and meet me. I was really excited to meet this person because I really loved the script. And she came in, and it was like in the middle of winter. It was snowing outside, and she was wearing Birkenstocks and socks and quite a short skirt, and she looked cold, and she just kind of looked like just quite she just looked like she tried to be wacky, and I just sort of felt like, oh, it just felt like it was going to be difficult to work with her, because the decisions that she'd made about how she was going to present herself seemed really incompatible with having a professional relationship with her. And that's it sounds awful, but it made her, the impression that she made quite a big difference to my desire to work with her.
Did she do that to impress you?
I just don't really know. She was all kind of tizzy-like, and it was cold, and she just looked red and cold. I was like, oh, do you need a water bottle, a cup of tea? And she was, no, I'm fine. I was like, this is a professional environment, and I'm here to essentially pay you and make money, and we're going to be working together for 4, 5, maybe 6 years developing this project together. How are we going to do that if this is how you present? It just felt incompatible with the job that was at hand.
What does that look like in terms of, I think, across all 3 of your roles? There is a role for feedback. I think in all creative industries, basically, the thing that I found is everyone wants to be nice. Everyone wants to present as nice. Fundamentally, we're making like qualitative decisions on everything. And so there has to be feedback. Like, for all 3 of you, how have you developed the ability to both give and receive that in your various roles?
I've got, I did a bit of teaching, as Deborah mentioned, and have been in various like writing classes and stuff myself. And I've found those really helpful in terms of, the giving of feedback and sharing that sort of relationship. And I remember we were just thinking, God, it's such a privilege to have people giving my work this much attention, whether or not they like it very much or whether or not we agree on everything. And my sort of motto throughout all of those, and particularly then when I was a teacher, is that like we should take our work very seriously, but not ourselves. And I do think that that's maybe something that I carry in the rest of my professional life as well. That like, the work is the focus, and then you've got to sort of be prepared to have a bit of a sense of humor or a bit of perspective outside that. When then the work, as you say, maybe it is the issue, then that could be a problem. But at least then, if you're trying to make sure that you're not making it personal and you're not making it sort of too sensitive, then I think that can be a better starting point, maybe.
I'm still thinking about the answer for mine.
Okay, so my job is about giving criticism all the time. And so, like when I was talking before about learning my voice, I think that's what this writer Paul was trying to say to me, is that you have to learn how to give tough love, how to say what you're thinking and say the truth in a way that isn't going to send someone home in tears. And so, it's a skill that I've had to really develop, how to give criticism, but also equally receive. And I think it's always to be done with kindness and trying to understand the other person's perspective and not take it personally, though sometimes it can be personal. I don't know. It's a tough question. It's part, isn't it? It's 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 a life journey, isn't it? The criticism thing.
Yeah.
Someone said it's the criticism sandwich, but I always see through that. I'm like, yes, just get to the meat and
Be bright, be brief, be gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In terms of feedback, I'm trying to think of where we normally give feedback. It would be if we were hiring, for example, we might give someone a task to do, like a basic PR campaign. Where would you see it sitting? Where would you pitch this author to? Maybe writing a draft press release. And then again, the feedback needs to be kind. You know, there might be gaps in that PR plan, and I'll think, why haven't they put down Women's Hour, or they haven't put down any magazines? But you think, well, they're just starting out. I used to be an assistant. I didn't know everything, and you learn on the job. You really do. In publishing, I would urge you to try and get experience. You really do learn so much. And in terms of press release writing, that can be a bit more brutal. I think you do need to have a basic idea of how to write a press release and how to sell something without being too gushy, but also not being too brief. So if we see potential, it doesn't have to be perfect at all, but it's very easy to go online and research what a basic book press release might look like. And if someone has done that research and then presented this in an interview, that's good. I know that they've done some homework, so they really want this job. If you do work experience in publishing, I would urge you to, if you have done your job that you were asked to do, if you have free time, let people know that you're free and that you can do something else, because we really remember that. We have a lot of work experience people, but if we know someone is always saying, I've done that, I'm now free, I have nothing else to do, is there anyone else I can help? Instead of sitting there and just thinking, great, I've now got an hour off. Yeah, the feedback would be just show how passionate you are. For me, that's really important.
I would say one more thing, and that in I don't know if you guys feel this in your areas of expertise, but I've learned there's a language of talking, like how to talk about a script. So when I'm giving criticism and I'm trying to break down a script, I might talk about like the inciting incident or the midway point and the third act turn and the hook, and you can sort of couch criticism in that kind of terminology. And actually, if you can learn that terminology, the sooner you can learn that terminology, you can learn how to give and receive criticism without it sounding personal. You're just talking about the inciting incident needs to happen before page 5 and it hasn't, so that's where it needs to happen. And so there's a kind of language of how you can talk about something that enables you to give and receive, I think.
It's true.
Yeah.
So, just do you think a burgeoning industry professional or creative mind can prove their mettle without any formal prior experience or recommendations? And how far do you think connections, networking, and community building can take you in helping you break into the industry, with like thinking about things like making yourself known and building a brand and kind of setting yourself apart from people who also want to be entering the industry? We obviously know there's such a huge number of people who want to enter, and how do you change that? How do you, if you have nothing going for you, almost no opportunity to get an internship, no recommendations, no nothing, how do you get your foot in the door? Can you get your foot in the door?
Yeah, I believe that good people, talent gets found. So this notion of brand building as a writer feels anathema to me. But I mean, I received a CV and a script today from somebody who's like been a finalist in 7 different competitions, screenwriting competitions that I'd never heard of, but they were on his CV, and I was like, well, someone thinks he's good. And so I was kind of excited to read the script, and he came not from an agent. It was an unsolicited script. I'm not supposed to read unsolicited scripts at the company that I work for, but I secretly do. And if they're good, I will try and help them find an agent. So I guess there's 2 writers that I've supported in that way, where they've sort of come completely fresh and without an agent, without representation. They don't necessarily have any kind of background. One writer wrote a script in a notebook and just sent it in, and everybody at the company went, what, it's written in a notebook, he's not even bothered to type it out. And I just thought the voice was really amazing. And actually this guy got an agent, he he went on to do stuff. So yes, I think it is possible, but it's also about timing, about that script landing on the right desk at the right time with the right person reading it, who's in the right mood, who's got the time to read it, who's got the time to help them. It is a lottery, but it is definitely possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely possible. And actually, to your point about the writing competitions, that is a great way to get noticed if you want to enter writing competitions. There are so many out there, so don't be scared. I mean, just go for as many as you can, because publishers look at those, and a lot of the judges are actually in publishing. Yeah, it's hard without connections and that, I think it can be really tough, and there are internship programs now, but I know the window's closed and there are certain limits on how many people they can take, etc. But yeah, I would say just get your foot in the door. And I did say before, it's harder now without having an agent. But if you are good, agents are looking, but it's a business, they need authors. So they're always looking for new authors. So please, don't think that that's a big hurdle. It's actually, they need you as much as you need them. So just persistence. I think if you really want to go and work somewhere, then find an email and email them.
I think as well, I'd also say for on sort of publishing side of things, I'd say if there are poets or maybe playwrights or whatever, or even prose writers, and you can find a night that's going on somewhere, or even like an online showcase where you might be able to share your work that way by reading it, then not only are you sharing your work, and you may even get some sort of instant feedback or have an instant connection with someone who you have then just been able to share your work with without having to wait for 6 months for it to get published in a magazine or something, then that can be really valuable. And also, you said community building, which is like, a really lovely way to think about things, because then automatically you might also find some like-minded people, or you might think, oh, I'll come back to this night next month or something like that. And then again, what other skills are you learning whilst you're there about what makes a good event, or what writing don't I like so much and why not? So yeah, really, like there are opportunities that can be a bit more live, a bit more organic, and that should absolutely be taken, and that then you can whack onto a CV, absolutely, or talk about in an interview. So yeah, I think finding those opportunities. And I think absolutely, as you say, and I think as Shona and I both said, that maybe if you haven't had direct publishing experience, as long as you have a real love of literature and are able to be like, oh, but my customer service skills would come in so useful here, or like, my book balancing skills would be really valuable for this. Just be trying to think about ways to translate that experience as best you can.
Can I add to that also? Go to your book festivals. If you see a book festival's on, if you see an author is speaking at an event or somewhere, just go, because it's very likely that one of their publishing team will be there, their agent might be there, their publicist might be there, their editor might be there. So you might actually have contacts, and the people in the publishing team will be hanging around with the author at the end when they're signing the books. So keep your eyes open and go up and talk to people, but go to these events and the festivals. It can be really useful.
Open up for questions in a second. Think about, unless someone's already got a burning question. But if you want to have a little think, also ask another question to the panel.
I was going to say that if you do have a question, just raise your hand and I'll come to you with this mic. And I should also say that apart from the 100 or so people in this room, there are several hundreds who are watching this online, and the questions have been pouring in. And so Ella's going to be reading those out, and we can go between them. Yeah.
Okay. Start online. And then if someone sticks up their hand, then we'll get the mic over to you.
Students essentially, or people kind of in the process of like gearing up to breaking into, especially the publishing industry. And questions relating to what's the best way to make that leap. So is an MA a good idea? Are grad schemes good? Or is it best to build up work experience? So where do you go at the end of a degree to break in?
I would say, firstly, things are changing and you don't necessarily need a degree anymore to break into publishing. That is definitely a Penguin Random House. It's no longer a prerequisite. So it's good if you have one, fine, that's great. Publishing courses are interesting because it gives you an insight, but that's not going to be make or break about whether you get a job in publishing. It's going to be your drive and your passion and your how we see, how much you really want the job and what you've done in terms of work experience. So yeah, I would say the education side is really good and useful, but it's no longer something that is like you absolutely have to have.
I think I might also say as well, as part of everyone's sort of reading mission, to be reading widely in terms of authors, but also in terms of publishers and presses, and so reading with independent publishers and presses who then, so one of my first roles in publishing was working as a publicity assistant for a press called Penned in the Margins, who do quite a lot of experimental poetry and prose and theatre and stuff. And that they just so happened to need someone just to help them for about a month. It ended up being quite an informal thing, but was so eye-opening for me and such a useful thing to do. And because they were such a small team, it was on a much more ad hoc basis, I think, than it would have been had I tried to sort of go straight in with a massive publishing house. So yeah, I'd recommend looking on the fringes a bit as well.
I'd second that in terms of experience. I think I didn't study literature, so I did go uni, but I don't have a degree in literature at all. Yeah, experience. I rocked up after I graduated to a theatre because I liked their poetry night rather than their plays. And just got an internship. So it really is experience. And I kind of started in theatre and from one thing to another just led to another. One of the best things a previous boss of mine actually told me in terms of anyone wanting to go specifically into literature or publishing was take a look at your bookshelf or think about all the books that you really love and then just look at the margins and see who's published them.
Yeah.
And that'll give you a good idea in terms of the sort of stories you like, the sort of publisher, maybe even the sort of field that you'd like to go in regards to literature. Use yourself as the litmus test, but I don't think anything really beats
being on the job.
experience.
Yeah, and I would add to the small press is a really good point. There are so many small independent publishers as well as large, the big five. But also, if you have a local book festival, see if they need any volunteers. They always need help. Or if there is an event going on, see if you can help at the venue. Just there are lots of different ways. You don't always have to go into the publishing house.
Hi, my name is Kavina. My question was directed towards Shona. Book talk. I know social media affects a lot of publicity nowadays. Authors, from what I've heard, have been told to build that presence with an audience, even before submitting to a publisher or to an agent. And so I was just kind of curious on the inside ends of how you guys farm with social media, how you guys are kind of navigating this field. I feel has really blown up in the last 5 years, even 10 years ago with YouTube and things like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it is a massive part of the publishing process now. That's more on the marketing side. So although publicity and marketing work really closely together, it would be my marketer who's working on the campaign that would be looking at the digital ads and book talk and YouTube and Facebook. I mean, Facebook is phasing out now slightly, but Instagram is massive. There is a big book community on Instagram. So we like authors to have a social media presence if they are submitting something, but it's really not a prerequisite because we can help them build that up. It's good if they do, but it's not something that they have to have. But yeah, it's a big part of publishing. It's huge, actually. And I don't know what the question was, but I agree with you. It's a huge part of publishing and it's a really important part of our campaigns, for sure.
Yeah. Digital social media.
I think from a professional side, so yeah, at Southbank Centre, we do a lot of promotion. It's a lot of organic posting, so it's not necessarily directly trying to sell tickets for an event, but it is just trying to sort of build awareness of everything that's going on at Southbank. We did some recruitment recently where a couple of people were able to talk about their own sort of book talk accounts or their own Instagram activity or the way that they post reviews or do that sort of thing, which was really interesting and did give a bit of an insight into their interest. So I suppose it was useful in that way. as a writer, I've definitely found loads of opportunities on Twitter and Instagram and stuff over the years, so it can be a useful tool. I've also definitely wasted so much time, like so much time on social media. And I think just because every now and then you will find out about a competition or an opportunity, you then justify, oh, well, I better keep scrolling because who knows what the next thing will be. And so like I would definitely advise like caution there. But again, as a community building thing, it can be a good tool. So yeah, I feel its presence very heavily, and yeah, it can be a source of good and bad for me.
Like not so much. I mean, when you've made a program and it goes out, you kind of like, you know, when you've made a TV program and it's on air, like it launches, it drops, you can sort of find yourself anxiously looking at Twitter to see what people are saying about the thing that you've made, which can be both amazing and horrifying. I hate it. But in terms of kind of working with writers, directors, other producers, I'm not at all interested in their online presence. I'm just looking at the work they're producing and deciding whether I like it or not. So yeah, interesting. Although interestingly, when casting, people are starting to talk to me about, oh, they're really big on YouTube. They really have a really strong presence on TikTok. You should be working with them. And, you know, I have tried to engage, I have engaged with those kind of that talent who are found through those mediums, but it's not my first port of call at all.
Oh, actually, we'll do one. Let's do an online question and then you know.
Languages. So are there particular areas of, for example, the UK market, which really value people coming, like writing books that are set in like outside of the UK and the US, or who are working in bilingual ways or through translation? Is that clear? Okay, great.
I'm wondering what the actual question, sorry, can you repeat the question? Okay.
Trying to looking for kind of particular markets that are open to debut publishing. So yeah, there are a few
Okay.
things that are
Writing in a different setting, no problem. If it's written in English and you want it to be published in this country, then absolutely. Obviously, our rights departments try and get world rights, and we will, if there are translations available, that's another part of the business. And that's not the actual big department; it's the rights department. The bilingual autobiography, I think it would need to be in one language. If it's English, then it could be published here. I'm not sure about what that question means, as in we would sell a book in a market according to what language is spoken in that country. Is that the only other question?
I'd also say though, in regards to that, in terms of like settings and things like
Yeah.
that, there are also like the small presses that we were talking about before.
Yeah.
There are particular people that are really interested in particular types of novels.
Yeah.
And again, what you read would probably, if you're a writer, what you read might determine where you want to look.
That's true.
To some extent, like you have specialist publishers in like Caribbean poetry and such. Lily will know who I'm thinking of, based in like Manchester.
Oh, what People Tree or
People Tree Press.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's Tilted Access, who do really great work with a lot of writers from Asian countries, and then who else am I thinking of? Well, yeah, and we at Southbank Centre, we do an event with the International Booker Prize every year. We do events with them. So we actually did an event with Han Kang not long ago, who's just won the Nobel Prize. And that event, she'd spoken Korean throughout, but we had a translator. So there can be really exciting ways to then bring bilingual sort of like events to life. It is definitely an extra layer of complexity, but then it can be so rewarding, particularly when like the stories that you're opening up to be told. So yeah, it's not out of bounds, certainly.
Are there any topics or genres recently that you've when you see them in a work that you've been given that really pique your interest or really excite you nowadays? Or alternatively, are there any that you try to avoid in work that you deal with? And if so, like how would you go about promoting or reading a script or putting on an event for certain genres or certain topics that you encounter in these works that, in your industries?
So I can answer for TV from the
Mhm.
rest of. So I used to joke that I didn't like stuff that was weirdy woo, which is what people call genre, which is sort of like horror, sci-fi, supernatural. And then I realised sort of growing up I loved Star Trek. And I was like, oh, that kind of counts. So I had to open my mind, which was it was a bit of a revelation actually, because I was like, oh, don't be so close-minded to genre. It's kind of, it can be amazing and philosophical and clever and interesting and sort of sexy and gorgeous. And so I started to open my mind to reading and trying to develop supernatural genre horror programs. But actually, the reality is, I think you said it, or maybe it was Louis, but actually, it's a business, it's commercial. So if broadcasters are saying they want horror, grounded horror is the thing that apparently they want at the moment, I will develop grounded horror because that is what will sell, and it's a business after all. So, and actually, what you were saying, if it's good, it's good. Good things shine out. And even if you're not comfortable necessarily or thinking that you're sort of naturally aligned with that genre or that subject matter, if it's good, it's good. And you find something to love in it. And that's really exciting. That's one of the reasons I love the job, because it's always be surprised by what lands on my desk and what I can get excited about.
It's a good question, because I think we do often kind of think in terms of themes and trends, and so you're right to be thinking along those lines as well. And so then sometimes it can be, you shouldn't get too distracted or too worried about themes, because then also you don't want to be either doing something that isn't the right fit for you, or you don't want to be writing a book that someone else might also be trying to write. A sort of positive example of something that I've really loved kind of programming events around in the last couple of years, and it's relevant to our discussion because living in London is a real consideration financially when thinking about careers. But there's been a really great sort of proliferation of novels, poetry, non-fiction that is about London living. And thinking about that politically, thinking about that in terms of a housing crisis or communal living, or what that means kind of like romantically and all the rest. And so, we've done some great events recently that have combined poetry and non-fiction and fiction on that topic, which managed to then be sort of like intensely personal, but also intensely political. And I think that that's a really interesting kind of thematic space to be working in at the moment. So I'd encourage everybody to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of publishing, I think it's a funny business because we're trying to sell books at the end of the day and make money. So we want to be publishing things that we know people are buying and what they want to be reading. We also are looking for original. If it hasn't been done before, that's another positive. So it's a really mixed bag. I would just say stay true to yourself and just try not to emulate, but be aware of your readership.
It is difficult, I think. I remember I don't agree with thinking about the form at all. Just make the thing whatever it is, if you are from a writing point. But I do remember like a few years back, so we used to receive pitches for events when I was at Southbank. Oh, I'm sure they still do. I think be careful about, it's fine for things, and it's really good to know your audience and know what things you're aligned to. But if it feels too
Formulaic.
Formulaic, and then I think that doesn't work. And I do remember one year being pitched like so many versions of Sally Rooney. People were like, "Oh, we got Sally Rooney in space. We got Sally Rooney as a bacchanal."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, like you're killing me." So just be aware of don't try and repeat a thing with just a twist. I say that at the same time, I'm pretty sure the pitch for Jaws No, the pitch for Alien was Jaws in Space.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
who knows? Yeah, any other questions in the room? We'll get the, okay, so we want to, actually, let's go, yeah, let's go right there. And then there's one at the back, and then while we're waiting, let's go.
We've all spoken about the importance of building contacts and networks within the industry. What is a good icebreaker if you go up to an industry professional? What do you start talking about?
While you guys think, I'll say, because
I like your hair.
I don't like speaking. I'm not shy. I just don't like new people. So, yeah, the thing that I used to do was often plan, like know what rooms you're going to be in. If you're going to an event, just do a little bit of research and be like, okay, cool, I'm going to an event by, Grant's on a penguin, like maybe a couple of weeks before, even read like the first 50 pages of like the last couple of books that they published and have an opinion about what they do. And so you can go up in the gush and be like, yo, I love, or you could be controversial and be like, yo, I read what's going on there. Like it helps for me anyway, just being like, oh, you're vested in this, like you've got an interest. And like it gives a basis to like talk about.
Absolutely, yeah. Books are very much our friends in that way, and like and we're lucky to have that because there's so much to talk about. So I think that's a really good point, and just books more broadly, you can focus on, and then you don't have to worry too much about small talk and that sort of thing.
I would also, if you are at a party or at an event, there's a reason you're there. You could be really honest and go up to someone and say, I don't know anyone. This is who I am.
Yeah, never.
Can I ask what you do?
Yeah.
It's fine. It's really, I think we really appreciate that honesty, and it's okay to admit that you don't know anyone at the party.
Yeah.
And also if you have an embarrassing experience, I mean, I've had many, when I first started in publishing, when you say the wrong thing to the wrong person or you mix someone up with someone else, don't let that put you off. It really happens to everyone. So just don't think I can't do this, that I can't go and mix and match and I can't go to any more events. You can, everyone does it. They just don't tell you about it. So just have, everyone's human. We've all done it.
Sticking with that, like, yeah.
Hi, thank you for sharing your experience. And I just wanted to ask a question for people who are starting in publishing or perhaps want to be writers or submit a script. So what are sort of the do's and don'ts? Because you mentioned about building your portfolio and your image, and emailing agents potentially or companies. So first of all, how would you, how does one reach out to companies through LinkedIn or trying to, how do you build that network when you start from nothing? Is it a good idea to sort of look at everyone's LinkedIn accounts and try to email them directly? Or is that something you shouldn't do? Or what would you recommend, both for people who are looking to start a career in publishing and for those who are looking to submit their work? Thank you.
In terms of publishing, there are small publishers and big publishers. The bigger ones will have work experience schemes where you apply and they take in a certain pool every year or every quarter. The smaller presses, I would say, email them. Don't be scared to look at their websites and see if you like the kind of books they do, and then they will have contact emails on the website, or at least an inquiry form. So do contact them with your CV and say, that you're willing to work in any department, why you want to get into publishing. And, they do look at it and they do need help. We have really busy seasons. So that would be my advice, is just reach out and don't be scared about it. If you have to do it through LinkedIn, do that, or do it through an email. People don't really pick up the phone that much anymore, but you can try. It's not that easy so much, but I think personally, going to events, going to a book festival, going to an author talk, find someone and talk to them in person, face to face. If you have your CV in your bag, give it to them. I mean, there's nothing like the personal connection.
I'd say from a creative writing perspective, though, I think it is slightly different, and I wouldn't necessarily use LinkedIn or anything like that to try and sort of go down that avenue. I think some publishers, and again, this is sometimes the case with smaller publishers, will or magazines or small presses and things will have submission windows when they're open for a particular amount of time, or they're accepting submissions for a particular amount of time. And I think, yeah, that's absolutely the moment. That's what they're designed for, to submit. But if you wanted to maybe create a bit more of a connection or a bit more of a back and forth, perhaps send them a message and say, oh, hi, I've got this short story, whatever, that I'm thinking of submitting. I have these questions. Would you mind? And they'll get back to you, and that will be great. And then that just means that you've had a bit more than sending it out into the void. But yeah, I would kind of work with them on the sort of limited time that they've got on that front. And then I think, yeah, be treating it quite separately in terms of like their job in publishing and getting published. And then that will just for your own sake as well. That will keep it clearer.
Say actually, I can't put words in her mouth, but I think if Rachel was here, depending on what you're particularly trying to do, say like with poetry, Lily has that experience. Sometimes you just make your own thing.
Yeah,
So I know like Lily's got her own event. I used to live in Brighton and I started a poetry night just so that people would let me program.
Yeah.
So like, it was not picking to do it, so I'll just do it.
Yeah.
And if it's good enough, I'll hopefully cover my costs.
Yeah,
It's
And it
true.
becomes so like sometimes you can create your own space. Yeah, like with digital media and stuff, if you're not doing poetry and it's not a live thing, maybe start a medium with a number of friends and you can like, you know, do something significant. Zines were huge, like obviously there's like Gowden, which is now closed,
Yeah.
but like there's lots of ways to kind of create your own community and then impact in terms of building. Yeah.
You could ask your local bookshop if they put on events. You could ask if they ever want any help. If you could work for free at a weekend. It's just an example.
Okay, we'll go online, and I know there was red hair at the back.
Just about 5 minutes until we.
I think I should probably really like to respond to a few of the themes that have come up online. So you've spoken about kind of unpaid work, in particular attending events that are often in London. What are the implications of the need to do all of that for equity and access in the industry? And what is the industry doing, and what can we do also within higher education to kind of combat some of the negative implications of that for access to the industry?
Definitely in the TV industry, there are loads of kind of access schemes. But when I was talking about doing work for nothing, I was sort of talking about it in context of I was a runner, I was being paid to be a runner, but in order to get to the next level, I did work for free within the context of already being paid. And at every stage of my career, like when I was a runner, I was also, whenever someone was ill, I'd be like, please can I go be a cable basher on set? Please can I go and be a third AD? Please can I go and shadow the director? Because I just wanted to learn as much as I possibly could about the whole picture, so that when I was ready to produce, I knew exactly what everybody on set did. And I put in the extra hours in the context of already being paid to do the job that I was doing. And when I was script editing, I was always looking at, okay, I've been a runner, now I'm a script editor. Okay, what's the next thing? So even when I was script editing, I had an eye on becoming a development producer, and I was working extra hours. I was courting writers. I was talking to directors. I was finding avenues into becoming a producer, even though that wasn't my job. But I think it's really, really, really hard to just work for nothing. And certainly in TV, there are loads of programs where to sort of combat that, so you're not expected to do it. But I think that if you want to progress, and this is, I guess, a soft skill conversation as well, you just have to put the extra hours in. That's just it. That is just the way it is, I think.
Yeah.
I was only going to say, sorry, that's my phone. I was only going to say, sorry to give the impression as well that all the events are in London. There are lots of events in London, but there are so many around the country as well. And organisations such as the RSL and others are really dedicated to making sure that a lot of those events are online as well. So yeah, I'm sorry that so much is in London, but please don't let that feel that that doesn't mean there are other things to go to.
So, I mean, publishing is still very London centric, but there are now publishing houses spreading across the UK. I mean, we're trying to make an effort to open offices across the country. And again, there are bookshops everywhere. So if you wanted to get experience with events or and also festivals, there are so many great literary festivals around the country. So if you, and they often do pay for help when they're on. So yeah, it's changing slowly.
I think like in terms of like I worked about a year, a bit more unpaid to get in, and I could only do that because I already lived with my sister. So yeah, that's not great, and I don't have any solution for that. I think things are improving across the board. In terms of like the London centricness, there are publishers like Tilted Axis, and like there's a little cabal in like Sheffield, Manchester. I'd look at literature development agencies around the country. So you've got like New Writing South, based in Brighton. You've got like Writing West Midlands. You've got
New Writing North in
Newcastle.
Newcastle.
You've got a number based in like Manchester, Norwich. So like if you look at them, they also have like a great understanding of that region's, I guess let's say like literature landscape in terms of publishers' events. And so they're a great place to start, isn't it, to find, and they all, actually all of them also post opportunities in that region with publishers, bookshops, festivals, those sorts of things. So they're a great place to start in terms of if you're not in London already. Actually, London's got its own language, like spread the word and such. Yeah, they're a great place to start for finding your way in and what you want to do, and just finding all the other context that you need. Might need to be the last.
Hello, thank you. This has been really insightful. I am a careers advisor and I'm also an author. So my question, unsurprisingly, is about portfolio careers, partly because I have one, but also it might solve some of the things we're talking about. I think a lot of people that work in creative professions do have multiple jobs, and either it might be like mine, where one of them has nothing to do with it, or it might be like, I know some of you have mentioned you have multiple jobs. I just wondered if you had any tips or practical advice on how to manage that and kind of maybe develop that adaptable mindset that can help people stay in this industry, even if it's difficult.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I'm still figuring it out. I think, yeah, being, yeah, time management is obviously very important, and then yeah, not being afraid to guard that time as well. So be realistic. If you are doing a piece of work with someone, but because you're then doing several other jobs or you're only part-time with them, be like, great, I'm on it, but this will take another week before I can get back to you, and that sort of thing, just so that you're managing expectations and taking the pressure off your own shoulders a bit. I think as well, like yeah, Shona said, like such a huge part of our jobs is reading, and then just yeah, being aware that that is going to be eating into your free time. Do you need to be setting out time for reading and for that sort of thing for yourself as well? But yeah, it can also be such a generative and rewarding way to work as well, and you can find yourself getting inspired in unexpected ways, or yeah, taking bits from one career into the other. But yeah, it's the juggle is real, and but like is to be celebrated, and you're right that it can sometimes just be like the way to make it sustainable. So yeah, don't be afraid of it, and don't feel that it's any less valid just because you're not going to the same office every day for the week, or yeah, it's a way of making it work, and there's a lot to be said for it.
I'd also say maybe think about what you like, why you're doing it and what you want, and what your particular skill is. Like I'm similar to Lily, got multiple jobs, I guess I'm freelance. But I think I've got a relatively good idea in terms of what I offer. And so it's just different like variation of the same thing in terms of like different outputs. And that might make your life a bit easier if you know what your strongest skill is, and that there's different ways to apply it. That might make it easier. But also having something completely different can be a panacea from one to the other.
Yeah,
like, I know if you're writing, I think like Lily mentioned it in the back, like having something that is not that might keep your sanity. So yeah, there's there's a number of ways to slice the cat. That's not that phrase. Skin.
Slice the cake. Skin the cat.
Skin the cat. But yeah, I think we're pretty much out of time. So yeah, I want to thank everyone here for turning up and also everyone online. But most of all, I want to thank our amazing panel and co-chair. Please give a round of applause.